And they've got this line from the Emperor at about 1.5 hour mark. He's like, "An entire legion of my best troops awaits them." I'm like, really? No worries. Muppets will take down your best troops and I'll be fine. I don't think we even got many casualties of Ewoks. Howdy. Today we're looking at some good movies that had not so good or controversial endings. And today I'm lucky enough to have Corey's help. He's a really funny guy who's made me laugh loads of times on his channel Double Toasted. Thanks for checking these out with me, Corey.
Man, it is not only my pleasure, but it is my honor to be doing this with you. This is going to be a great discussion, but he is so detailed oriented and you were so professional. I didn't know that you were going to come out with so many long ideas in this long list right here. And again, so many details, but it got me real excited because I can already tell this is going to be a great discussion.
Oh, you're such a movie buff. I knew you'd have a whole bunch of good points, and I've listened to your reviews on Toy Story. You obviously love your animation, have a lot to say about it, and have thought about the story and that sort of thing. So yeah, lots of interesting points for us to go over, I think. We went through as well and picked a couple of choices of endings you didn't like and a few from my community. So our first suggestion was Toy Story 4. This suggestion's from my community. It's actually one of the most high-ranking movies of all time, certainly the Toy Story series. Movie 1 is actually, next to Wizard of Oz, the highest-rated Rotten Tomatoes movie of all time. It was suggested a lot, though, the ending of Toy Story 4 was apparently bad. My top comment is actually, Woody left this kid for someone who treated him like crap. And I was like, really? She treated him like crap? That really surprised me. I looked at the ending and I thought, this is beautiful. This is an ending that the movie really didn't make me kind of tear up until the very end there. I just thought, oh, that ending made it for me. So I was quite in disagreement with this. And the fact that I don't think Bonnie treated him too well. And I don't blame her because she's a kid with a toy. And Woody was a hand-me-down from Andy. And maybe, cowboys weren't her thing.
Yeah, okay, so this is the one. This is the one that I think might rub people the wrong way because I completely disagree with people who say that Bonnie treated Woody like crap and that he should have stayed with, Bo Peep, that Bo Peep treated Woody like crap and that he should have stayed with Bonnie. Listen, first of all, and I don't want to play any kind of stereotypical gender roles here, but let's just look at the situation and be very as real as we can be about talking toys that come to life and become sentient and start doing things on their own. So those people who say that Bo Peep treated Woody badly, they're like, no, Bo Peep was very straightforward with Woody. She was just very matter of fact. She was just telling him how it is. And like I said, when you get down to the gender roles here of what kids like stereotypically and what they don't like, he's a cowboy. Woody, he's a cowboy. How long is a little girl going to want a cowboy toy?
And even in the 90s, when Toy Story 1 was made, like the whole point of Buzz Lightyear coming in is in the 90s, kids were into space. That was the thing. I remember growing up in the 90s, we had space posters everywhere. And so even from the get-go, from when the series was first starting in the 90s, like Woody was always, a leg down in that way. Like he was never really relevant.
Yeah, that's something that I think I'm going to say is controversial for people. I get why Woody is a cowboy toy for Andy, because when Buzz comes in, they want to make the contrast of the old versus the new. But Woody was real old school. I mean, I believe in the 90s that kids, back then, they weren't even getting cowboy toys. Woody seems like a toy that would be more suited for a kid in the 50s or the 60s. So imagine Bonnie. Bonnie not only has a toy that, again, if we want to get to gender roles here, stereotypical gender roles, she has a toy that's probably meant for a boy demographic, but she also has an outdated, real old-fashioned toy. Woody seems like something you'd find in a collector's shop, not something that's new on the shelf in the 90s. So I understand him not really wanting to go back to Bonnie. And you probably have your reasons, and I don't want to talk too much. I'd like to hear some of your reasons why you think it was a good choice for Woody to remain. And for those who know the movie, at the end of the movie, Woody stays with a band of lost toys that don't really have kids anymore. toys that are not played with, toys that have been lost out somewhere and just can't find their way back to their kid or their home. And Woody decides to stay with those toys because Bo Peep is there for one, but I think that has a lot of meaning, and I'll tell you why in a little bit, but you can go ahead and give your reasons.
Yeah, well, my only complaint, I only have one complaint with the movie, actually, and that was later on, I felt the chemistry between Bo Peep and Woody, but sort of early in the series when we first meet them together as lost toys, I didn't really feel the chemistry. You can tell when you look at Woody looking at Bo Peep, he loves this girl. He is just so enamored with this woman. Like every shot, he's just, got those absolutely love-struck eyes. But I think Bo Peep was so distracted in achieving her goal, I think that I didn't really feel that chemistry back as much. But as the movie went on, I could see, particularly around the ending, she really missed him. And she was really sad to see him leave. So I thought it was a good ending personally, but only because I really felt that chemistry at the end. At first, though, it didn't really feel like a reconciled love as much to me, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, for me to jump right into why this ending, I don't agree with people who say it's bad. I'll just tell you straight off that people who want Woody to get back with Bonnie, that's selfish. That's selfish of the audience. And you picked a doozy at the beginning, because this is the one that I think is going to upset people, because I'm calling them selfish. And I think people are, because they want that safe, happy ending. They want what they expected. They want what was predictable. And I disagree with that. Having Woody stay with the lost toys, man, that's bold. And that has more of an emotional impact. This bond that we've seen these two toys have over the years, Buzz and Woody, they become some of our favorite cinematic duos, man. They're right up there with some of the greatest. And, all these years we've been used to them being together, and now they're split up. And I think it's hard for them to process that, and they want them to still be together. And that's the meaning of that scene. That's the meaning of that ending. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be about, at some point, like we all do, having to probably separate from loved ones, families, friends. And I also think that it gives the viewer a lot to think about when that happens, especially in this movie. So it might seem like a really bittersweet ending, or maybe even bad ending for some people, for Woody to be a lost toy. Oh, he has no one to love him, no kid in his life, no kid to play with him. That's a good thing, if you ask me, because these toys, and you probably heard me talk about this in my review, or maybe we did a retro review. So if Woody was to go back to Bonnie, he's going back to a life of servitude. He's going back to pretty much being a slave. And he's only going to go back to be forgotten again at some point. These toys keep repeating this cycle of psychological abuse, man. Maybe I'm getting too deep with this. But, but he's going to find another kid. That kid is going to grow up, or that kid is going to say this, is going to find a new toy, and then that original toy is going to be forgotten again, over and over and over again. First they're new, then they're a hand-me-down. And then eventually, and this is what frightens me about this, that could end bad for any toy out there. There's a comic. It shows a kid, maybe it was Andy. He's old, and he still loves Buzz and Woody. And he says, I'm gonna love you forever. And then the next panel is him being buried in his coffin. And guess who's there with him? Buzz and Lightyear. So, and they're freaking out because they're trapped in this coffin with this corpse forever. So there's a possibility of maybe a kid loving them too much and it ended in a bad way. It's to go and leave with these lost toys, that's freedom. They make their own choices. They don't have to repeat this cycle of psychological abuse and neglect over and over again. I thought that was a beautiful thing.
When you put it that way, it makes the whole series seem incredibly dark. And I actually remember...
It's always been dark to me, man. When you think about it.
It's a movie series that sits with you. You actually point out, despite the fact that it has this sort of like beautiful front, you'll be thinking the next night, oh crap, that's really disturbing. And the way it kind of ends up for these, not to dwell on it too much, but the way it ends up, as you actually said, is they'll probably end up in a landfill. And it's just like, either way, it's a bad ending, but it's about appreciating that moment you have and making it good for those around you. That's the purpose and meaning of it.
Or eventually one day, that ending where they're all about to go into that furnace, that ending is going to come true one day if they keep living. It's a
Maybe that was the best ending.
What's that?
Maybe that was the best ending.
Oh, you talking about bold ending? Yeah. This whole thing of with these toys living pretty much having eternal life. I mean, at some point, it's going to end bad for them, and that's why I thought, there should be. And I even think I thought about this before Toy Story 4. There should be some point where these toys find a way to have their own freedom. Whether they revolt and take over mankind or they just form a society of lost toys. And so I was very satisfied with that ending in that point too. There's a lot of layers, as you can see, to this ending of Toy Story 4. And I think that people opting for the simpler and predictable ending is a disservice to that movie's storytelling and not appreciating what they did enough and why that movie is great.
Well, maybe the toys taking over as lost toys will be the plot of Toy Story 5. Do you have any predictions for Toy Story 5? Because I've heard we've got that coming, and I'm like, oh God. But I think you made a really good point, which was saying that, well, they've made it this far. They made it to 4 and still really powerful, great movies. I trust they can do a 5.
I'm very scared about 5. Just like I was saying with these toys, if you keep going, you're going to get to a bad end. I'm thinking that with Toy Story, man. I'm thinking that they're going to keep pushing it until we finally get that bad Toy Story film. And we've seen, and I don't want to look. I'm being very dark right now, and I'm being very pessimistic. I don't want to see them continue to keep pushing these movies because, as we've seen, not only with Disney but with a lot of studios, the only way to get them to stop is if they make something that doesn't make money. And it usually doesn't make money because it's not good or it's ran its course. And I think that's what they're going to keep doing with Toy Story. They're going to keep pushing and pushing until, all right, we get to the point where we've made the bad one that turns people off. And now we're not going to do it anymore. Yeah,
we're in uncharted territory now in history, actually, movie history, because as you said, I can't think of any other movie series that has gone on for 3 sequels that has remained this good quality. And they take their time with them, and I guess that's part of it. Like, they can take a decade with these just to make sure they get it right.
Yeah, I really hope that they can pull it off. And part of me wants to see how they do it. Part of me wants to see just if they can pull it off, and the other part of me is saying, I've been satisfied ever since 3. I've been good, and we got lucky with 4, and I just think that there's a point where you can only wrap up a movie so many times on a beautiful note before you fumble it. They've had so many endings that were moving, so many endings that meant something, so many endings that were so well written, and the last one really pretty much said what it had to say. So, and I think going back, and because what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to reunite Woody and they're going to try to reunite Buzz. And, it just kind of goes against the sweet message, the bittersweet message that they had at the ending of 4. But whatever, we'll see.
The second choice we had for a bad ending actually comes from me. I'm to be the one to be blamed for this, not Corey, not my community, so throw the tomatoes at me. Return of the Jedi. I don't like the part of the ending to this movie with the Ewoks. I think the fact that the Empire is destroyed by Ewoks is really stupid. So I think it was kind of silly. Like, what do you think of that ending?
Don't y'all hate on this man. Because I'm right there with them. If you look at, they take you down, we're going down together, my friend. Because I'm so. Return of the Jedi is one of those controversial movies that we're talking about, with the controversial ending. Because I think there's still this debate over whether that the ending of that movie truly deserves the hate that it gets from some people. And I understand why, because Return of the Jedi has so many great moments in it all the way through. I mean, the beginning with Jabba and the palace, that's some good stuff. That's really great. The Sarlacc pit, it gets goofy with Boba Fett, but for the most part, that's a fun sequence. And then when you finally do get to the climax, even with the Ewoks, you know, we're still shifting and we're still cutting to different scenes and different set pieces that are amazing. The whole thing with the Death Star and the battle with that, there's a lot of good moments with that. I mean, that has one of the most classic lines in Star Wars. It's a trap. It's a trap. You know, that's amazing.
Yeah.
The stuff with Luke, Darth Vader, and the Emperor, that's a great dramatic moment and a great action set piece in itself. Yeah, and then you keep cutting back to these Ewoks, and to me that's the reason why that irks me. The reason why I can't let that go is because, you know, sure, the Empire is crippled by the Death Star being destroyed. That was a big blow to them. But this is a struggle against space Nazis that's been going on for years, for decades, for who knows how long, but it's been a long time. And also, this is a struggle with space Nazis that's been happening throughout the whole galaxy. And yet,
Exactly.
yeah, and yet this one planet of little cute teddy bears with primitive sticks and stones, that's the one that takes them down? Out of all these years of all these other planets, with the technology that they've had, with the advances that they've had, with the resources and the armies that they've had, they haven't been able to take down the Empire, but Wicked and the gang, they're the ones that do it. Nah, man, I cannot accept this. I cannot. I've been trying for years to come to peace with this. I can't.
I remember saying to my brother when I was only like 9, it's like, so wait, the Empire's gone? Like, that's it? It's like, yeah, they're playing on Stormtrooper heads. I guess that's it. And they've got this line from the Emperor at about 1.5 hour mark. He's like, an entire legion of my best troops awaits them. I'm like, really? No worries. Muppets will take down your best troops and I'm fine. I don't think we even got many casualties of Ewoks.
No, they had one. I remember there was like one scene where Ewok tried to wake one up and he's like, hey. You know, and I'm thinking, okay, this is all cheap. This is none of this makes sense. So the VIPs of this epic trilogy, it's a bunch of little bears with sticks and rocks taking down a regime that has a Death Star. That's how advanced their technology is. And I get it. There's something to be said about primitive sticks and stones taking down high technology. I understand that, a David and Goliath thing, but this doesn't work. And
no.
And the fact that, well, I say fact, but I still don't know to this day how true this is. But you've heard over the years that the Ewoks were actually supposed to be Wookiees before, and the reason why they were changed to Ewoks is because teddy bears are easier to sell as toys.
I wonder how that worked out for George Lucas. Like, were they big sellers?
Big money. That's how it worked out, baby. You know. I don't know how true that is. I should have researched that. I've heard that over the years, but I don't know how much of that is urban legend or how much of that is actually true. But if that is true, that makes it to me even cheaper. So, or even worse.
Maybe that was the intention, but I noticed exactly at around the 1 hour mark, the movie does take that weird turn where suddenly Leia is greeted by, these jumping, dancing Muppets and is trying to make friends with them. I'm like, what am I watching? I was just watching space battles and this incredibly intense not incredibly serious
Yeah,
and kind of
yeah.
silly series. But, and what gets me is this entire thing is based on the fact that C3PO manages to convince them that he's a god. I mean, we would have watched our heroes be turned to meals, evening dinners, and suddenly they're all chummy and friends. Oh, we're part of the tribe. But it's like a scene ago, Han's going, "You were just about to eat me." A scene ago, I was about to be eaten by you, only because C3PO convinced me that he's a god. That's the only reason I'm your tribeman now.
So were these Ewoks about to eat everybody too?
Yeah, like they put him on like the sticks and the spits. They were already friends with Leia, but they were like, oh, they started going, oh no, to C3PO. And saying, "Oh, they think I'm a god," and he says, "Oh, if you don't release them, I'll use my evil god-like powers." So to do that, Luke lifts him up with the Force, and suddenly, they're like, "Oh, he's clearly a god. You're our friends now."
Why haven't these Ewoks, if they're that badass, how come they haven't been recruited to go in and just help continue the fight, man? How come they're not? How come not a part of the Rebel Alliance? I mean, how come we haven't even seen the Ewoks anymore?
3 movies ago, we could have just gone, "Oh, we can just go down to the Ewok planet and recruit them, and they can take down the Empire. Just stick them on the ship, and apparently they'll be fine."
Yeah, they can do everything else. They're about to eat Han Solo and Princess Leia, and I mean they took down the Empire. This is crazy to me, and to show you just how much this might be true about the Ewoks being more marketable. I don't know if you knew this, but they had an Ewok Saturday morning cartoon.
Oh, they did too, didn't they?
Yeah. So to end this series with this idea that we need to make more money on toy merchandising is a huge disappointment to me. It just again makes this ending more shallow for me. It's the last images that we're left with here also with this epic close to this series is the Ewoks playing stormtrooper helmets like bongos, and it's very comical, and it's even sillier when you see something like that.
It's just a crazy ending. It kind of makes me think maybe George Lucas got a bit more involved in the final movie. Like, as you said, I like Jabba's palace. It's so atmospheric. There's so many good parts to this movie. But I feel like the Ewoks were just kind of a little bit of his influence coming in, particularly if we look at the prequels. Like, that was pretty much fully guided by him as director. And it makes me think that, maybe this was his influence just getting a bit too much before the series finished.
It does feel like it started out as something that was just a really good story, something that was very inspired, and then it got a little dark during Empire Strikes Back, and that was just great storytelling. And then by the time we reached Return of the Jedi, again, great moments in there, but they started to embrace the more family-friendly or sillier sides of things because the studios wanted to make money. Probably George Lucas wanted to make money, and there was more of an emphasis on, okay, what can we do to appeal to the younger demographic, including selling a bunch of toys. So that's a very cynical approach to something that could have been huge, something that could have been just a much better ending than what we had.
I don't want to speak for people, but I think some people choose to just put it aside and almost get amnesia of the Ewoks because that scene with the Emperor and with Vader and throwing the Emperor down the pit, this is so iconic imagery, it's unforgettable. And I think after that happens, like people are just like, oh yeah, I guess there was some Ewoks in there. Even though that was a huge portion of the end of the movie, we just think that ending scene just so good, in the throne room. If I can put the Ewoks aside, it's an incredible movie.
Yeah, and you made a great point by saying that you think a lot of people, they excuse the ending, and I think they do. I think a lot of people are forgiving of Star Wars because it's Star Wars. And I think that was really starting to happen with Return of the Jedi. It had reached that point now where people were kind of nostalgic for it. There was a lot of fan worship, and people were ready to excuse anything with that because, well, let's not lie, man. I was a kid when I saw it. I was about 10 years old, and I saw Return of the Jedi in the theater. And as a kid, let me just be honest. As a kid, I loved it. I loved the Ewoks. Yeah. I loved that battle. So don't let me act like I was above it either. I mean, it worked on its intended demographic. I saw it 4 times just because I love the Ewoks so much. It wasn't until I got older that I started to realize, okay, this makes no sense. So the movie did serve its purpose, and it's a very entertaining film. But I do think, again, even when people start to realize, hey, this ending is kind of silly, they get nostalgic for it because they're like me. Where I grew up and I'm like, well, my eyes have been opened. This is stupid. No, a lot of other people are like, well, it meant a lot to me. It's a big part of my childhood, so I'm going to let it slide. And thus, Return of the Jedi still goes down as one of the best Star Wars movies because of the great things that are in it, but also that big nostalgic moment for a lot of people when they were kids and they were so excited and entertained by this.
Absolutely. And like, I was the same way. I was going to mention, I loved the Ewoks as a kid, but I also like Jar Jar. So, like as a kid, both of them served
We have
their
to end
purpose.
this conversation right now, man.
Our next choice was actually one you suggested, which I thought was a really cool choice. Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's like, it was a bit controversial at the time because it was considered too dark for Disney. And nowadays it's an absolute classic because it's so dark and it goes into territory Disney's never really gone into again, like this really, really fiercely evil judge in Frollo, and some of the imagery and the discussion of lust and the discussion of just seeing such a corrupt person in power. It's awesome. But what didn't you like about the ending?
Well, you bring up a good point by talking about how dark it is. And I think this is a movie that it has two sides for me. I'm very conflicted on it because I do admire the dark places that it went. I mean, for a family movie to come in and approach those themes of lust, and that judge, I think that judge is one of their best villains. He's so scary and he's so vile. And so there's a lot that I admire about this movie, but it goes to some dark places that I don't like. And it's mostly in the themes of physical appearance and also mental illness. This movie is approaching those things in a very, very shallow way. And so now this is the one that a lot of people love, and this is another one that I'm probably going to make some people angry when I talk about what bothers me with this. So I think, to just get straight to the point, at the end of the movie, you have, what's her name? Esmeralda and her love interest. What's his name?
Phoebus.
Yeah. So you have these two characters. And the movie ends with them getting together. But as you know, if you've seen the movie, or if you've even read the original source material, Quasimodo is in love with Esmeralda. And so at the end of the movie, there's this whole thing where Quasimodo, he comes to terms with, I'm not gonna be able to get with Esmeralda. But hey, you know what? You two beautiful people, hey, you should be together because you're good looking, because you're beautiful. And so there's this message to me, maybe I'm reading into this too much, but there's this message to me that says, if you're ugly, then you won't get love. You probably don't even deserve love. But beautiful people, they do fall in love. And if you're ugly, you should just sit back and be happy that the beautiful people have found happiness. Hey, maybe you haven't found happiness for yourself in the form of love, but be happy that these beautiful people got it. And to me, that is, again, that's just that's the wrong message, I think, to have.
It's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
I looked over the movie after you suggested and pointed that out, and I said, geez, you're right. That's a tough pill to swallow when I look at the end, because I'm very split on this ending, because in some ways, I think in some ways it's showing a little bit of a harsh reality where this is in like the 1780s or something like that in Paris, France, where it's likely that Esmeralda might go with Phoebus in that time period or something like that, because she literally called him a creature early in the film. I don't think that's right, as I think Quasimodo is just such a lovely guy and so earnest, and it's kind of tragic. And the only thing that makes it a little bit better for me is the fact that in the really, really, really bad sequel with like a tenth of the budget, he meets this lovely circus lady called Madeline, who at first is a thief, but really loves him for who he is. And I actually watched it just before this. We had this discussion here just to catch myself up, and through gritted teeth because the animation is so bad. You know, Disney sequels, they're
Oh yeah,
horrendous. 90% are horrendous.
yeah, yeah.
The only other thing is that Phoebus saves the life of Quasimodo, and this is kind of, I think, part of what he says. Okay, you saved my life. You can have the girl. And I don't know how Esmeralda feels about it. It's such a mystery to me because, like, there's a song in like the middle where the stupid gargoyles are encouraging Quasimodo to say, "Hey, you should tell her you love her." And at first, sometimes I'm like, "Oh, he should. I want him to be honest," but at the same time, I'd be gut wrenched if he was rejected. So I'm always very split. It makes me think, and I guess that's a good thing, but I definitely do dislike that underlying message, like you said, that like it's saying unattractive people kind of, that's horrible. That's absolutely horrible. So maybe they should have at least hinted rather than just, you're accepted by society. That's all you get. You know, just be lucky they're not throwing tomatoes at you anymore.
No, you're right. Well, listen, realistically, Esmeralda's not going to get with Quasimodo. And I admire that even as much as this is Disney-fied, that they don't push that. That's even realistic for a cartoon or an animated film. But I don't think that we need to glorify that either by giving it the Disney treatment, which is why Hunchback was, when I heard that they were even doing an animated Hunchback movie at Disney, I thought that that's a weird choice. So there's just certain things that seem like that are very weird themes that just don't adapt too well to the Disney treatment, and I think that this is one of them. There's just a lot of things in there that just don't work because you have to be realistic about it. But again, you have to make it happy too, as tragic as it may be. And while I'm on that topic, not only are they saying that Quasimodo should remain without love? Like you said, hey, at least you got the love of the public now. At least they're not throwing rocks and the tomatoes at you. And who knows how long that's going to last. But also, I think that and this is one that people are really going to jump on me about, but I'm just going to put it out there. I think they kind of make light of his mental illness. I mean, there's a dude he's locked up in a bell tower and he's so lonely that he's talking to these gargoyle statues. You know, he sees them as they come to life because he has no one else. They're not real. He's just talking to himself. And at the end of the movie,
I wish they weren't real.
What's that?
That's a rough part. Is that some people say, oh, maybe that in some ways would be more deep and interesting, but when you look at it, they're actually in the ending throwing rocks at the guards and that sort of thing. And there's some speculation maybe they could still not be real, but it generally is implied that they're real, which is really stupid because I like the idea of them touching on mental illness. Yeah. But you are right that they kind of trivialize it a little bit.
Yeah, I always saw it as, okay, maybe, but I don't think that they make a convincing way of saying statue gargoyles exist in this world. That just it never made sense to me. And I always thought that whatever the gargoyles were doing, that was in his head. He got lucky getting by. Those gargoyles really weren't doing all of that. And so at the end, when they're crying for him and they're cheering him on, they're going in and they're again trivializing his mental illness, his hallucinations. I know that they show the gargoyles throwing rocks and all that kind of stuff. I just don't accept that these things are real. I just don't see it. But then again, if the movie says they are, then I'm out of line here. And everything I'm saying about his mental illness is a moot point.
No, I think it's a really interesting take because I tend to find it sort of 50-50. 50 say, well, they're real. The other 50 say it's a mental illness. And yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting take. And ironically, either way, I don't like. Because if it's just the gargoyles, they're just stupid comedy relief. If they're just in his imagination, then it's trying to very lightly expand on a very serious subject, but as you say, not doing a very good job. So I feel like either way, it's just Disney being Disney. And as you say, I think it's like very, very difficult to make this into a not as dark movie, because I looked up the book and it is ridiculously dark. It's just, Victor Hugo novel ending was basically Esmeralda is killed, and Quasimodo, overwhelmed with grief and despair, throws Frollo from the cathedral tower, resulting obviously in Frollo's death. Years later, two skeletons are discovered embracing in Esmeralda's tomb, and suggesting that Quasimodo, anyway, you get the idea there. And Phoebus as well is suggested to be killed. How do you save that?
Yeah. Disney should have done that. No. Nah. It's a rough book. And when you see how dark it ends, it was a very interesting. I almost admired them for their boldness for tackling this, but also you take this book that is so dark and to just try to turn it into a sweet Disney film, kind of goes against the work of the original author. But I don't want to be somebody that sits back and harps on that too much. The movie's made. It's not really hurting anybody. It has some really great moments in there. That the song Hellfire is that's a showstopper. So there's some there's some good artistry throughout that movie, and so I'm not one that where I look at it and dislike. I dislike the things so much that I can't acknowledge the good things that they did. I guess I can see where they were inspired to make an animated movie of this, and the parts that they did, well, they did very well. But I still just can't get over that ending.
Oh, absolutely. But I think that's part of what makes it a fascinating thing to talk about, and the fact that it's certainly more interesting than perhaps a safer movie like The Aristocats, because we're still talking about it today. And I appreciate that in movies the older I get, as you probably do, when they try to do something different, when they take a risk. As you said, like with the previous movie we discussed, they took a risk with Toy Story 4, and that makes it so much more interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
And I was going to say the next suggestion was Superman the movie from 1978. Do you remember if you suggested this one, or was it from my community?
I think we both kind of brought it up. I think I already had it. It was one of the movies that was immediately at the top of my list when we were approached to do this. And I think people, it's such a I don't know if controversial is the right word, but people still talk about and debate that ending till this day. So I think naturally everybody came into this discussion with that in their mind, including you, me, and your community.
Yeah, my community brought it up as well. And first off, I gotta say, I've seen other Superman movies since then, but I just can't get by seeing Christopher Reeves as the true Superman. Do you have a particular actor you consider like your version of Superman? It's like Garfield can never be anyone but Lorenzo Music to me. You know, there's always just that one actor.
Live action, Christopher Reeves is my Superman. I often say when I talk about Superman, especially with this new Superman that's about to come out, I talk about how that was my first big superhero movie. That was my first special cinematic moment. I was about 6 years old when I saw Superman at the drive-in with a lot of family and friends. I don't think I've had an experience like that since. I had other live-action or Superman properties growing up. They had an old black and white one that came on that I saw in reruns when I was a kid. But seeing Christopher Reeves do his thing, there was nothing like that. The only thing that came close to that was the cartoon Superman that I grew up with, like on Super Friends or something, which a lot of kids today wouldn't know about. But I'm no different from anybody else, to get to the point. Christopher Reeves still is the definitive Superman for me. The
choice itself of the ending makes sense to me, and I'm probably going to split the room a bit on this. I'm probably going to go against, again, this choice, because basically what people don't like is that Superman sees Lois Lane killed in like some falling rubble and she dies in her car. One, this alone is such a powerful scene, because basically Superman lets out the most crashing yell and just flies into the sky. Such a cool scene. But what people don't like is what he then does, which is he flies around the world multiple times and reverses time so that Lois Lane doesn't die. And I'm really curious, did you like this ending or dislike it? What did you think?
Even as a kid, I found it fascinating, but even as a kid, something felt off about that. At 6 years old, I guess I had a grasp enough of physics to know that even though Superman made me think I could jump off the roof one day and fly with a bath towel around my neck, that whole spinning the world in reverse just didn't make sense to me. Even then, I said this would be an ecological disaster. This would be a world disaster. Everybody would die if you did that. So even as a kid, that didn't sit well with me. I think a lot of people accepted it though for a couple of reasons. One I think is cool and one I don't. I think people accept it because of something that you said. It's such an emotional scene to see Superman in such anguish and that yell that he lets out, and and I think people, when they see that, they're very moved by that, and since it's what sets off the scene, people just go with it. But then there's other people who say, well, it's a comic book movie, so whatever. And I always thought that excuse of saying something is a comic book movie is a cop-out. It just allows people to just do whatever they want to with any explanation, and I hate that.
I totally get that. When I hear people really dislike the ending and they say it's a cop-out, like you said, I tend to think, would they have preferred Lois Lane to die? I really don't know. I feel like almost they were written into a corner, because in one way it makes a really powerful scene. Because the thing is that I actually kind of like the ending, because I love resurrection scenes. You don't often get them in fiction, but basically when someone comes back from the dead, the impossible occurs. And I think that's such a powerful scene. And I love seeing it in particularly a non-religious fashion. I think that's really cool. Yeah, I think I wouldn't know how to change this ending to make it better. Can you think of a way?
I would just rewrite it myself. Now, for some people, that's blasphemous, because I'm saying something should be rewritten in a classic film. But here's my problem with the ending. It's not as simple as me saying, well, you turn the world around and it's gonna destroy the world. Yeah, that would happen. And I know it's a fantasy film, but still, I think that's taking things a little too far. But let's push that aside. My personal feelings right here on that. Also, I think it's time travel, and time travel is right up there with Deus Ex Machina, twins. It's a trope that's used as a cheat sometimes. Time travel is a cop-out itself. So for them to bring Lois back by doing time travel, that was something I thought was cheap. I thought it was lazy, and also that undermines the emotional impact of Lois dying anyway. So it's just, to me, it's manipulative. We're just going to kill Lois just so we can get a rise out of the audience and get some emotion from the audience, and then we're going to bring her right back right after that. Maybe they could have done something where Lois was on the brink of death and we didn't have to do time travel to bring her back. He could have taken her to the Fortress of Solitude and done something there. I don't know. There could have been something where, and that goes against the whole purpose of saying that there's just some things that are out of Superman's hands. I think that maybe there should have been a point where she's near death, but she's able to come back. She's not dead, and we certainly don't use time travel to do it. But we bring her, she's near death, but she's saved. But Superman realizes that she was saved by. Check this out. Superman just has to sit back and watch the humans do their thing. He has to watch doctors save her. He has to watch her being taken to a hospital where they bring her back to life, or not bring her back to life, but save her life. And he realizes that not only are humans capable of these great things that, like he's been told, but sometimes humans can do things that Superman cannot do. Superman's not a doctor. Superman at this point, he cannot bring her back. He has to leave it to the human beings to save a human being. And so there's a moment there where he realizes, yeah, even I have my weaknesses and my faults, even though I'm Superman. And humanity brought her back, not me. And that just makes him want to defend the world more.
I can picture that in my head now that you say it, actually. The idea of maybe him just leaning over her body and trying CPR. I don't know if I think we had CPR in 1978. It's astonishing how new CPR is. But maybe trying that and saying, I can't do it. And as you say, him saying some things are out of my hand, and maybe the ambulance comes along, but it's hard to match the intensity of that scene. But as you say, it's a Deus Ex Machina. I don't know how to rewrite that ending. But I did want to ask your thoughts on another scene, which from my understanding, you actually think is okay, because that wasn't what ruined the movie for me. It's actually the most romantic, beautiful scene starts with Lois Lane flying with Superman. Like they fall in, Lois Lane falls in what is really, really bad green screen effect by today's standards. But after that, she's picked up by Superman and they fly. And we just get this quiet moment. And I thought, perfect, wouldn't change a thing. Then suddenly, Lois Lane comes in and is like, can you hear my thoughts, Clark? Oh, can you hear my thoughts, Superman?
Can you read my mind?
I thought, oh, why? This is so corny and so silly. And they apparently actually asked Donna, the director, if they could cut the inner monologue in the director's cut. And Donna said no. And I just don't get the vision in that scene. And I want to know, someone who saw it at a young age, if it fitted at the time or how that worked.
I think that I just overlooked it because I really love the movie so much, except for the ending. And now that I think about it, you're right. I think you have a great point. I think it's I don't think I ever thought that was great. I just thought it was just part of the movie. You know, I grew up with it. I thought, well, that's just what the movie does, because I was so young. The movie's just doing its thing. And now as somebody who's looking at it through adult eyes and hearing somebody else describe it to me, yeah, I think it's pretty bad. I agree with you.
Clearly there was a vision that we can't understand, because Donna said, yes, you have to keep the movie this way. But anyway, I Am Legend actually was the next choice. I Am Legend, if you haven't seen it, is a bit like the Fallout games, except no sort of hope whatsoever, until basically the last 20 minutes of the movie. Will Smith in a zombie apocalyptic hellscape with everyone but him essentially affected by the equivalent to rabies, but zombified. And I think it was a really good performance from Will, and I love how little vocals are in the movie. But it's a lot of my community recommended it for its ending, where essentially Will finds the cure, but he's brought in a lady who has essentially brought a lady back to his home, his one sanctuary from these monsters that he's been at for years. And the lady leads him back. She says, it's the will of God or something like that. And she leads him back, the zombies back. And essentially his whole place is just surrounded by zombies. And he says, okay, well, I've found the cure. It would have been really nice if I had a few more days to do this before my entire place was taken over by zombies. But you hide in here and you take my blood and take it to the sanctuary. And essentially, Will dies, and they say, well, he's a legend because we got it back to the sanctuary so they could release the cure, and happy ending, but Will's dead.
Yeah.
And it was so badly received that there was an alternative ending.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that they did a good job at that ending. Obviously, a lot of people upset about it. But I think that they were trying to do a modernized attempt at what the book did. I don't know if you ever read Richard Matheson's book or novella, I Am Legend, also, because they did that, and they also have a movie called The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price, who plays the Will Smith character of Neville. And so in the book, it's going to be a little spoiler for people who haven't read the book, but if you want to continue to listen, here's how it ends. So the character of Neville in the book has been going around killing vampires while they sleep in their coffins. And at the end of the movie, you find out that there's a new society out there of infected. But they're not undead. They're not zombies. And by the way, this book is ahead of its time. It got panned by a lot of people at the time, but it's really one of the books that kind of introduced a lot of zombie and vampire things and lore that we have today. Treating vampirism as a science. Zombies, mindless beings walking around, attacking homes and working together mindlessly. So this book, he's being attacked by these undead at night. So he's been going around in the daytime, killing them in their sleep or in their coffins. But he's also been killing some of the vampires that were not mindless zombies. And they are loved ones of this new society. So they come for him. They pretty much mortally wound him, put him in jail, and they're going to execute him. And there's a woman that is a romantic interest in the book for him. But she's been sent there as a spy by the new society to capture him. And they finally find him. And so at the end of the movie, he never finds a cure really, I don't think, even though he's been working on it. But he's given a cyanide pill, and the woman that he had a romantic thing with, turns out he killed her husband. And she was mad at him because society hates him. But she finally pities him, gives him the cyanide pill, and promises that she'll try to make this new society be kinder, be better. And at the end of the book, he just says, I'm the monster now. I will go down like vampires went down in my time. I am legend. So a little long-winded what I'm telling you, but you understand where you see they're trying to like make a version of that for the movie. So while I don't think it might have been handled that well, I understand what they were trying to do.
Yeah, no, I actually think the alternative ending sort of goes with that approach there of getting the similar message across, that they're trying to say that we can turn out to be monsters without even realizing when we think we're actually legends. Because in the alternative ending, he finds the cure and he goes out and gives the cure like right there in his room to some of the people. One of them is just trying to get his girlfriend cured, one of these zombies. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that he has been testing and killing accidentally many people, potentially like 100 of these zombies. And they think he's the monster in a lot of ways. And I think there's a little bit of that message going across in the alternative ending too.
So do you think it's more so in the alternative ending? Because I don't,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well then I stand corrected then. Then maybe they had a closer ending in the alternative ending, and so that other ending sucks.
Well, I think one thing that is people like that Will survives in the alternative ending, and they also probably like more the message that maybe during a zombie apocalypse, the person trying to make the cure is actually also the enemy to many people, and just giving that little bit of a moral gray to it rather than saying Will died and he's a legend for getting the cure, you know?
I guess I was thinking that the original ending, or the one that is disliked by a lot of people, I guess I was thinking that might be closer because at the end, the character in the book doesn't make it. He dies. They even have another movie called The Omega Man with Charlton Heston. Have you heard of this movie before?
No.
So it's loosely based on I Am Legend, but it's essentially kind of the same. And in that movie, Charlton Heston also dies. So I think that in all these movies that, and if people hate that Will Smith died, I guess that's where I'm defending the movie. And I'm not saying that the ending's any good. I guess if that's what really got people, I guess my argument was, well, that's what they did in the book, in the movie, and the Charlton Heston film. It's always been a theme that this person does not make it at the end, and that's part of what makes them legend. But like I said, man, I think after hearing what you said, either thing works. You always walk a fine line when you're trying to be somewhat true to the source material, unless you decide to just take a detour, which is what they did with the Omega Man. And you're also trying to create something new. That's kind of the risk you sometimes take. That's the hard line to walk.
I thought the next choice we had was quite an interesting one. I know you recommended this one because I watched it on your suggestion. This one is from M. Night Shyamalan. Shyamalan, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Unbreakable, which was made in 2001, and I think essentially I looked online and people said this is where his career went downhill, and I was like, was his career ever on a high in the first place? I thought people have always been like, man, this guy makes some weird movies.
Well,
Why does he put everything upside down?
Sixth Sense blew people away when it came out. Sixth Sense was amazing.
Yeah, he's got this thing with water. Like I noticed in a lot of the movies, like water is always the weakness. In Unbreakable, the great hero, the water is his weakness. What were your thoughts on the ending to Unbreakable? If you want me to explain, basically, like this guy finds out he's actually superhuman, but has kind of always denied it. And he has this fellow called the Glass Man who has really brittle bones, who essentially helps him realize he's a hero, but then turns out to be the villain. And in the ending, basically, he's reveals to the guy, "Hey, I'm the villain. I've caused these acts of terrorism." So people in my community said, like, he walks away. How stupid is that? He should have fought the villain. But then it's got these really quick flashes of text that says, like, David reported him to the authorities. And he was arrested.
Yeah, and Mr. Glass he's in an institution for the criminally insane. That's my biggest problem. I know that people go back and forth. I think for a lot of people, Unbreakable is seen as a groundbreaking comic book movie or superhero movie because it's probably one of the most grounded superhero movies that we have. And what got people is that they didn't know that they were watching a superhero movie or a comic book movie until near the very end when the pieces start to come together. And some people didn't like that. Some people thought it was stupid, but for somebody like me, it kind of blew my mind. I loved that. I loved how they approached that. I loved that it was kept secret from people until you saw the movie. But I still hate the very end. And I remember watching this and I thought, you know what? This ending seems like a great film that ran out of money at the very end. They didn't have enough money to shoot a good ending of him in the criminally insane institute and Bruce Willis fighting him or whatever. I'm not expecting a big fight because they want to make this grounded by adding a more dramatic and sad element to it. And I got that. So I wasn't expecting a big superhero climax fight at the end. I wasn't expecting Mr. Glass's wheelchair to turn into a mech or a robot or something with lasers. That wouldn't have fit the film. But we just get this great reveal, this twist. And right as we're saying, oh man, this is awesome. Then all of a sudden the movie's like, all right, go home. We rushed out the film. All right, get on out of here. Oh, he's crazy, and this guy reported him. All right, you got what you need, go home. And I just thought, man, you know what? This is the ultimate lesson in show and don't tell. The title cards, they seem lazy, they seem cheap, and they seem like a quick way to wrap things up. Now, whether that was in M. Night Shyamalan's control or not, I don't know. But I wish they just had taken just a little bit of extra effort to have one more dramatic scene of maybe we see Bruce Willis's character confronting Mr. Glass or having a one last talk with him in the institution. Or I don't know. I don't know how they would have done it.
Yeah.
I mean, give me some time. Give anybody some time. I feel like there's something that could have been better written to just not have something as simple as title cards, descriptions. I never liked that with things. And some people are weird about this. I'm not so much, but sometimes it is weird when you try to have these title cards at the end to describe things as if they're real and you're just talking about fictional characters. So definitely they should have shot something more, in my opinion. But
it was such a funny one because, like, I was watching through and it was dead serious, really serious. And then suddenly it flashes up these texts about, he reported him to the police. And it's just so silly. He's a Superman. Like, why is he reporting it to the police?
That's what the movie's saying. Like, he made a phone call. Like, come on, man. Yeah, I really hate that ending because I think the movie's pretty brilliant. and that ending is just something where it just wraps up too quickly for the elaborate way they told this story, and the way they just, and when I say elaborate, the way they just kind of slowly, just little by little reveal that, oh, this is a superhero movie. They did a great job at taking their time, and then all of a sudden at the end of the movie, all right, get out. So that is why I really probably one of my most hated endings on this list.
It's so fascinating that this movie came out a little bit before Samuel L. Jackson became Nick Fury in The Avengers. Like a few years before, it was so ahead of the curve in that way. And you are right, it's a very slow-paced movie. It's certainly not what we'd expect from a Marvel piece. But yeah, it's so common of Shyamalan to basically go into a movie and have this twist ending where it just makes me laugh out loud. Like I had the same thing with The Village, where suddenly, you mean you guys were there was a world around you the whole time, and you were just like, we'd just rather be here suffering in the forest? I'm just like, Shyamalan has a way of making me laugh, and I'm saying, I think that's part of the appeal of him. We want to go see the next movie where we're like, one, he's going to shoehorn himself into every movie, and it's hilarious how he puts himself into it, every single one. And it was the first time when I saw his last movie, Old, where I said, okay, this isn't funny anymore. This is really, really, really stupid. My wife and I literally went and saw that in cinema and walked out halfway. We were just like, this is so bad. We can't. This acting, we can't do it. And I think that's part of the fun of Shyamalan, is you just don't know what you're going to get. It's such a mixed bag. And I think that's the main reason he's had a career until now.
Yeah, until the point where the twist became so obnoxious. I mean, there was, I tell people this all the time. The Village is the movie where I predicted what the ending was before the movie was even released. And it's not because I'm good at predicting endings or twists. I'm actually terrible at it. But because M. Night Shyamalan has set himself up as the man who does the twist, I started guessing, all right, what's the twist here? And that's the only thing I can come up with. Maybe they're in modern times. I don't know. It turns out, oh, shit, I was right. Okay. So, yeah.
I was going to mention the next movie was suggested by you as well, Corey, Nightmare on Elm Street. Can I just say, this movie had a $1.8 million budget, and I went and saw it on your recommendation, and it had the $1.8 million budget but grossed $57 million. And Wikipedia has said it received critical acclaim and considered one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Really? Could you explain this to me?
Okay, let me just say that I get what you're saying. It's probably a movie that's today, and I'm noticing this with younger generations, there's certain things that as time goes on, things that are considered classics really become more a part of their time. And the thing with A Nightmare on Elm Street, I guess it was groundbreaking in the sense that it was the concept of blurring the lines between nightmares and dreams with reality. And also this concept that the murderer or the monster could get you when you're at your most vulnerable. But that resonated with a lot of people. And also Freddy, it was just the right combination of elements that made Freddy an icon. The fedora, that stupid sweater, the glove with the knives on it or the blades on it. Instant icon, that character was.
Oh, Freddy's a classic. Yeah, like I saw Freddy and was like, this guy is awesome. I can see why he's lasted so long.
Well, there were scenes in the movie that they seemed to hit with people who, you know, the worst part of dreams. They did it in that movie. The part of are not being able to run very fast while you're sleeping, when you're trying to run from something. So either you're trying to make it somewhere and you feel like you're going slow, or you're running from some threat and you just can't seem to get any kind of traction. They did that in that movie. They showed Nancy at one, I believe, there was a character who's going down some stairs and they can't make it. You know, they're going through sludge trying to get away from Freddy, and you know there were things like that that just really hit. Also, as I said, a lot of times your slashers were characters that were maniacs, or they were silent stalkers like Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers. You know, with Freddy, there was just something compelling about this guy that could get into your dreams, maybe had a little bit more personality to him, they were while also being mysterious. But I can understand where you're coming from because, it probably means less to younger audiences because those movies had probably more impact when movies stayed in the theaters longer. It made people talk about those movies more. And if you were too young to see it, those movies became sort of like campfire tales. People would talk about it, and the only way you could see it is at the theater. And if you couldn't go, then your big brother told you about it, or some of the kids who sneaked in to see it, or their parents let them see it, they told you about it. And so today, I mean, there's so many movies being made. They come and go so quickly. There's, they're competing with streaming and whatnot. And I make this argument for a lot of things, but I really do think it's the same here. Sci-fi does not have the same impact today like Star Wars would back in the day. And it's the same way with horror. Horror just does not have the same impact like it did a while back because, these things just come and go so quickly now. And we have so many alternatives now. And things just don't sit in the theaters that long. As far as the ending goes, one, I believe that when we start getting into those final moments, you have this actress here, Ronnie Blackley, who plays Marge in the movie. Her acting suddenly gets terrible. For me, in my opinion. Her acting is horrible. And then you get into some other goofy parts. The car that starts to look like Freddy's sweater. Like, oh, that just looks dumb. But everybody knows what I'm about to say if you know A Nightmare on Elm Street. That last shot of Marge being snatched by Freddy and being pulled into the door. All of a sudden,
so
it looks like he snatched a blow-up sex doll into the door, or a big piece of rubber or something. It's so stiff and it looks hilarious, and it's a horror movie that terrifies so many people. I don't think the last thing you want to do is people's last impression on that last frame is laughter. And I think that's what that gets from a lot of people. I remember seeing A Nightmare on Elm Street and I laughed. I laughed so hard at that. It just kind of, I'm not going to say it ruined my experience, but you want to walk away still feeling scared from a horror movie if that's their intention. And I walked away feeling like I just watched a comedy after seeing that. The movie, despite that stupid looking prop at the end, that blow up doll, it still remains a movie that is considered to be a classic to this day.
And we got Freddy out of it. The next choice I actually thought was you recommended as well, Jurassic Park Lost World. You weren't a fan of the ending of that movie?
So
I watched it through as well, and I definitely thought I found it really hard to keep up with in modern day. Someone coming in, I was just like, some of these decisions just puzzled me. Like I watched your review with it, and you mentioned as well, like how did the T-Rex get in this little container, and then why'd they put the T-Rex in there, and why is it going to the pool to drink in this random house? The logic kind of goes out the window in the last 30 minutes.
No, that's a good way of putting it. Logic is totally gone. So the movie there's silly moments throughout. People, if you watch the movie, you might remember the infamous gymnastics scene where a girl defeats a velociraptor by doing suddenly gymnastics, which was heavily foreshadowed early on in the movie. But the movie also has a lot of great Spielberg-directed moments. There's some great visuals, some great setups, some great suspense with those setups. But the last 30 minutes, it just seems so rushed that, as you say, it's illogical. I would replace illogical with stupid. So the last 30 minutes, there are some details that just aren't explained, and you just talked about one of them. If anybody remembers the last part of that movie, there's a ship that's about to dock in, I believe, San Francisco, or is it San Diego? Anyway, it's about
it's San Diego.
It's San Diego, yeah. San Diego. So this ship's about to dock, and it's revealed that everyone on board is dead because this T-Rex killed everyone. But somehow this T-Rex got out of its containment unit, killed everybody, went back in, locked itself in there. and not only that, but we see that the ship is being driven recklessly, but still being driven by a severed hand, which looks like thing from the Addams Family. I mean, it's a severed hand driving the boat. And how, when that person died, why their hand is still attached to it.
Dedication to the job.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, that man was so dedicated, even when T-Rex was attacking, he was still steering that boat, man. That hand is left on there, and somehow as it docks, the T-Rex is allowed to release itself. These are things that just don't make sense. They're bad jokes, probably could even be considered offensive. Attempts at bad humor. They have a scene where when the T-Rex finally is going through the city, Spielberg, and this is low for Spielberg. I'm not even saying it's racist or offensive. It's just lazy. They show these Japanese people running from the T-Rex, and it's just
that scene stuck out.
Yeah, and the movie just stops to show this, and it's a bad Godzilla reference. And for somebody like Spielberg, they're better than that. And I'm saying they're better than that, not because, again, they're being culturally insensitive or anything. You can make the argument they are, but it's a bad directed scene. The movie stops for a lame joke. Spielberg, he admits to going into the Lost World. He admits to going into that maybe too confident. The first movie made so much money that I guess he's thinking, I can go in here and just rush through anything and it's going to be a big hit. And I don't even think his heart was in it. I think at the same time, he was making Amistad. I might be wrong, but I think he was working on two movies at the same time. It was either Amistad or maybe it was Schindler's List. But anyway, he was working on two movies at the same time. And I don't think that his heart was into a sequel as much as it was into this more serious film.
I think Jeff Goldblum is kind of his voice in some ways. He's almost the viewer's voice because he's the one who realizes this is a bad idea. Like everyone is saying, oh, let's get them go onto the island and go see these killer monsters that are 10 times our size. And he's like, this is a bad idea. This is a bad idea. Why are we doing this? And then he comes aboard and is like, I told you this was a bad idea when they all attack. Well, and then he decides to release them.
Yeah, that's, like I said, this movie, it's a bad script to begin with. That's one of the funny things that has crossed over, though. Ever since the first movie, Ian Malcolm has been telling people, this is a bad idea. Why are we doing this? The big line is, you're doing this. I forgot what it was, but you're doing this because you could, but you never stop to ask why. So that's one thing. The second movie is just kind of one big, hey, I told you so. So it's funny in that aspect, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of the movie. There are things to like in there, but that last 30 minutes is the worst, and it kind of really brings the whole movie down for me.
Can I ask what you thought of the CG? Have you thought it's aged okay?
I still think it's good. I think it's fine. I mean, do you not like it? I
went into it and I thought, oh, these don't really look like they're here. Like, I don't know. I think I'm a little bit biased on animals in CG though, because I don't know, I've been running Forest 13 years and that sort of thing. And when I see an actual animal, I'm like, there's an animal I can see. And when I see some of the CG nowadays, like I didn't like Jungle Book 2015, and that one was considered a classic. But I see the CG and I'm like, it's just Mowgli looking at tennis balls. And I don't know, it was a little bit plasticky to me personally, but I think at the time it was, of course it's going to age. It's many years old, like decades old. But yeah, I wasn't a fan of the CG going in. But, you know, when they're in the dark though, like when you've got the T-Rex, I think it works there. But I definitely missed the actual physical models from the original movie, like the actual shots of like the giant T-Rex head and how they actually had it there. And there's something about when you have the actors actually reacting to this giant machinery that is really hard to replicate when you just say, there's a T-Rex in front of you, run from it.
No, you're exactly right. And I think it's an interesting point that you make. You sound like you're probably closer to nature than some people. And when you see that, I think you're gonna be more critical of CG or things that really aren't there. And as you say, you can see people reacting against a tennis ball or something. As we've been talking about throughout a lot of these movies, there's just some things that just probably don't age well. And maybe I didn't notice because at the time CG was still in that phase, and the way it kind of blew up at that moment to look so realistic. I still, at that time, if nothing else, I was a big fan of the CG. I'll still love the dinosaurs. I still think it's better than a lot of CG that we even see today. Since it was so new, there was such an effort that was put into it. My fondness for dinosaurs just keeps me from just hating this movie, but not a huge fan. And also I'm such a huge fan of the first one. I love that first one, so I'm gonna definitely be harsher on this second one because of that.
At heart, you're a Jurassic Park nerd.
yeah, I think I said that. I think I admitted that I cried when I saw Jurassic Park. When I cried when I just saw when I saw the Brontosaurus. Yeah, that's what you call it at the beginning. I was just like, oh my God, dinosaurs are back. They live. So I'm a big dinosaur nerd.
Oh yeah, we all have those moments we cry at. Like, I still cry at the end of Avengers Infinity War when Captain America stands up in front of the entire army and everyone is resurrected and comes out from the portals. There's these moments in fiction that I cry at more than I would in things in real life. And I think it's part of the magic of movies, you know?
Yeah, no, I believe that that's what movies are made for, man. Movies just give you this moment where you're so moved by whatever it is that's hitting with you. And that's why movies exist, man. Movies, at least these kind of movies, they exist to give us that feeling. There's a reason why we want to see them. And I teared up watching the Superman trailer. So it's nothing wrong with being moved by these movies and these moments that are meant to give us those feelings. And no matter what, they're different for everybody. But that's what's great about them. Even the movies with bad endings, what we consider have bad endings.
If you have any personal thoughts on what you thought of these endings, if you like them or you didn't, if you think we're way off, you let us know in the comments.
Or if you think our opinions have been really bad or really good, which I'm sure some of you will. But we'd love to hear what you have to say. So as my man here said, please let us know. Let us know some movies we didn't mention. We'd love to hear them. And this has been great. I've enjoyed my time with here, and as I expected. I tell you what, it was even better than I expected.
Oh, it's a privilege, man. Thanks very much for having me on the show.
Oh, and it's been an honor on my part too. So thank you. And I want to thank everybody out there who's been watching and listening. And hey, I hope we can do this again sometime. It's been a great discussion.
Definitely, man. I'll see you then.
Yes, sir. Bye.